What story did you say was nice? Hamlet?
I said the room was nice. I said the room was a nice story.
First you said the room is a nice story, then you're telling me demons are pretty.
It's such a grandma
I'm sure
thing to say about the room.
somebody has drawn an anime demon boy who's like a basic white boy with spiky black hair, and he's probably pretty pretty. But demons as a concept, I'm not going to say they're pretty.
Welcome to the Animorphs Book Club podcast, where we read books in the Animorphs series and then talk about them in a book club format. Be Natural, hello, who are you?
I'm Be Natural.
Did we start the episode?
Yes. Be Natural, who are you?
I already told you who I am.
Okay, Batter, who are you?
I'm Batter.
Mustard, who are you?
I'm Mustard.
Who am I?
You're Stir.
I am Stir.
Today we read book 10 of the Animorphs.
Air Morph One, ready for takeoff.
It's a little weird that they broke the whole title convention by having the in
I
it.
say good for them, because that was a stupid title convention.
It really was, because the titles didn't make... At least the title in this one kind of made sense somewhat.
This one was obviously ghostwritten.
Anyway.
It's not written by Applegate, we can tell you that much.
Yeah, I mean, Applegate's pretty inconsistent sometimes with her writing ability, I think. Quality.
Should we start talking about the cover?
Well, no, we should summarize the book first.
Summarize.
Oh yeah, okay. So there's this we meet this new character named Melvin. We also learned where the Animorphs live, actually.
Well, where Melvin lives.
Yeah, the Animorphs not even in this book for some reason.
Melvin is though.
Melvin's in. I assume that Melvin will meet up with the Animorphs in a later book, and I assume they must be in the same town in order for this to happen.
Well, no, there is teleportation in this book, so that's
true.
not out of the question.
Well, Melvin lives in Atkinson, Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
I think we can deduce that the Animorphs must live not far from there.
And he is 12 years old. That's like official.
He's 12 years old.
He's in 7th grade.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And he's 12 years old.
He's 12 years old. So, Melvin, he really wants to be the president. That's all we know about him, really. He lives and so the school takes a field trip. We are also introduced to Melvin's friend and possible fellow Animorph named Freddy. It's not very
possible.
It's not. He does end up morphing, but it's not. He's not really. He's not mentioned in the book. Official. He's not on the cover, so I'm not sure if he will become an official Animorph of such. We will have to see. So anyway, Freddy and Melvin are in a school. They attend a school, like many children in America today. They go on a field trip to a milk factory, but it seems very suspicious. Melvin sees
the milk factory is sus.
A dead cow outside the milk factory, and as you know, cows never die in the process of creating milk, and so this is immediately suspicious. Eventually, he and Freddy, they break into the factory at night, and they get a sample of the water, and they get a local scientist who, I don't know if you guys are ready for this, but the scientist is a woman. She tests the water, and she finds that there's anthrax in it, which is a biological warfare agent. So they deduce that someone must intentionally be putting anthrax into this water.
Yeah.
And obviously it must be stopped. Also, it's raining, and the river's going to flood and leak into the water of the milk plant, therefore polluting the river with anthrax.
Is it the Mississippi River?
It's the river.
It's the Elkhorn River, which flows into the Platte, which flows into
it's the river. It's the local river. It'll flow into the Mississippi River and pollute the water for many people who will die of anthrax if this is not stopped.
Millions of people.
Many millions. Yes, this is true. So then, Freddy reveals himself to actually be a Native American, and therefore he has the ability to transfer people's spirits into other people's bodies. And so, using this ability, he becomes the Secretary of the Interior, but that's not all. Also, he turns his friend Melvin into none other than the President of the United States of America.
Yeah, President...
But hold on, so how is Melvin an Animorph if he has no control over when he can turn into it? Because he has to have Freddy study his Indian magic.
I assume he and Freddy are very close, you see, so it is almost like they share this power with each other.
It's Melvin's...
Perhaps Freddy will transfer his powers to Melvin, realizing that Melvin...
But Melvin's going to have to learn Omaha if he's going to say the magic spell.
This is true.
Melvin uses an Omaha prayer to transfer his body into the president's.
And he also takes the scientist the woman scientist who discovered the anthrax, he takes her there too.
Dr. Cumberton.
Dr. Cumberton.
Dr. Cum.
Dr. Cum.
Burton.
Let's just call her that. Dr. Cum. He transports her into the body of another woman whose name is also Dr. Cum, and she looks exactly like the Dr. Cum that we know and love. So they get to the White House, and there's General Asshole, and he is very bad, but luckily Melvin realizes that he's very bad, and furthermore, he realizes that the entire government is very bad, and nobody cares about anything except money, and so he gets in his car to go save the river from the anthrax, but, however, somebody starts shooting at him, and nobody is doing anything about it because the government is very bad and only cares about that money, so...
And his limousine was swapped out with a limousine that did not have bulletproof windows, which is how he was able to get shot in his limo.
Yes, because the government, as I have said, is very bad, and they do not care about anything but money. Anyway, they get to Air Force One, which is where the title of this book comes from, and then they get in the plane, which is known as Air Force One, or Air Morph One, if you will, and they get to Nebraska, the Atkinson, Nebraska, and they stop the flood using the power of the people.
Of the army.
The army, but also the people of Atkinson, Nebraska, who are so great, and that's really what America's all about. They stop the flood, everything's fine. Melvin announces that they're going to dismantle the anthrax plant, and that there's not going to be any more war. We're not going to make more weapons. It's very bad to make weapons and make things that kill people because that is not very good. And then at the end of the day, Melvin and Freddie and Dr. Cum, because she is after all a scientist, they go back to their own selves, and Melvin says he doesn't want to be president anymore. He wants to be a doctor or something that will help people. And
he takes down his poster of Mount Rushmore that he had in his room.
It's very impactful.
Symbolic.
Very impactful. I was crying. And that is Animorphs book Air Morph One, ready for takeoff.
So did we give reactions for this book? What is everyone's
reactions.
My reaction
This is probably a downvote from me.
was a thumbs down.
Thumbs down. The book sucked.
It was mostly boring, except for the last third. There wasn't even.
I hated the last third. That was the most boring part.
There wasn't even any morphing in it until the last third, which is totally not, which is very out of what's the name? Very unusual for an Animorphs
book. The first book didn't have that.
Not something I want. Even the first book had more morphing than this. And in that book they were like, we're not gonna morph, guys. They didn't even mention morphing until like page freaking, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was about 80.
This was much shorter and out of like 120 pages. Like, this was much shorter than most.
This might be my first thumbs down. I haven't decided. Maybe I'll give it a mare, but this is definitely like first thumbs down material.
Like, I'd say I'm glad that like Visit 3 didn't show up like randomly at the end of the book.
Yeah, there were really enough
I'm glad they decided to make the General Burden the main villain, which is a new person we haven't seen.
But then I like how it's not revealed that General Asshole is actually Visitor 3 in disguise. Or in Morph?
They stuck with it.
They didn't teach us that, did they?
What?
No. Was that revealed in this book?
No.
I like how it's not revealed in that book, because...
Wait, is that revealed later?
No, well, I don't know. I can't tell you that.
I thought you were just spoiling something.
I think this book is just self-contained. This book seems like a very self-contained adventure, much like Book 9. I like how this book did not reveal that anyone was Visitor 3 in disguise. It was a refreshing break from Visitor 3. Yeah. That's the only positive I can give this book. I mean, I like Visitor 3, but he's used too much, and it really dilutes his evilness.
The characters introduced in this book were much more flat than most of the Animorphs.
Well, okay, hold on. So the first character we meet is Melvin, the main character, and we know some things about him. He wants to be the president.
Really, really bad.
Yeah, he did social studies. He is bored by science. And he doesn't want to go to Disney World, which
he's an extrovert.
Which is odd.
Which is he's very strange.
Yes, he's very strange.
He's not like the other boys.
He's not like other boys.
He doesn't want to go to Disney World. That's one of his quirky traits.
He's been around much more. That was not an on purpose thing. He's been around much more 6 times in his life because he loves it so much.
Mount Rushmore.
And his best friend is Freddie, who is a Omaha Native American.
This is very important.
Who is introverted, and he likes science, but not social studies.
Yes,
he just
doesn't
won't
like
shut
social
up about
studies.
science. He loves science so much.
And he's more introverted.
Yes.
He's very calm. He just sticks with Melvin through and through.
We should bring up how we read this book.
Yeah, so we did something different for this book, where we just took turns. We just took turns reading it out loud.
Well, I was announced when I used a different audio book, so I feel like we should at least bring up how we read this book.
Yeah, we have this book in person, by the way.
Yeah, we had trouble finding a PDF of this book online, so we only have the physical copy. So notes were a little bit harder to organize. And
What do you
stuff.
mean? We mailed each other every book. Oh, should we talk about the cover?
Not yet.
I think we should talk about the cover and the summary on the back last.
Okay. All right, so
any phases or like pages that anyone really liked? Just there was that whole Melvin part that was silly.
I'm not going to. So we realize. So Melvin, much like the other Animorphs, will not tell us his last name. But he has a little bit of a different reason, rather than because he doesn't know about the Yeerks at this point. I assume at least they aren't mentioned in this book.
Mm-hmm.
So at least the Yeerks are not a motivation for him not telling us his last name. But he says some people will read this book and make fun of me. Mm-hmm. And that is why he does not tell us his last name. This is very interesting because this is a different motivation than most of the Animorphs have, but it's nice to see a little variety introduced into our personality characters.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But he's willing to give his real name Melvin because Atkinson, Nebraska has lots of Melvins in it.
Yes.
He won't tell us exactly where he lives. Like, he won't tell us his address, but we do know the town and the state.
We know his first name, we know his town, we know
the town he grew up in. We don't know if he's currently there.
That's true, I guess he could have moved at this point.
Yes, I mean, since writing the book. But he said that Melvin is perhaps the most common name in town, and he kind of proved this by there's Melvin's barbershop, the mayor's named Melvin, I think like his uncle's named Melvin. Pretty much every side character who's a Mel and lives in Atkinson is a Melvin.
So I like that they introduced that and they didn't immediately forget about it. That's nice of them.
Yeah.
Nice of K.A. Applegate, the author of this book, or whoever ghostwrote it. I'm pretty sure this book was ghostwritten. Anyway, Melvin
Wasn't Bad about to say something?
No.
Melvin can't go 2 paragraphs without going on a tangent about how much he wants to be the president.
Yes.
He says it in dialogue too. Like everything he talks about is about how much
He's
he wants
really
to be president.
obnoxious. I hope that once he meets the other Animorphs, he'll become more of a rounded character.
Well, by the end of the book, he does stop wanting to be president, so...
Is this book written, like, soon after... Because I feel like the Animorphs books, it's assumed that they're all written, like, after the adventure is over. At least that's the vibe I got. When this book comes, it seems like it was, like, just written, like, after he had this adventure.
Yeah.
Because it's not written as if he knows about, like, the Yeerks and everything.
Right.
So this may be the earliest, like, canonical written Animorphs book.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a little theory myself. It's revealed that Melvin, or rather Freddy, has the ability to put his consciousness into other people's bodies, which he calls morphing, but that's not morphing. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I think that it will be, at some point later in the series, Melvin's consciousness will replace one of the Animorphs' consciousness later in the series, perhaps Cassie, so Cassie can stop being so annoying and be annoying in a different way. Cassie will become Melvin, or anyone could become Melvin, and then we would have Melvin as our main character inhabiting the bodies of one of the Animorphs, and he would call it morphing.
So that brings up
morph. But he would also be able to morph for real.
So that brings up a curious conundrum about whether that's any better than what the Yeerks are doing.
Yes.
I mean, if he's taking over these bodies, which he calls morphing, like he attributes the Andalite name to taking people's bodies, but it is taking it's not just cloning like the taking the DNA and making a new one like the Andalites do. It is. That person doesn't have their body anymore.
Which makes me wonder, like, what happens to their brain? It's never addressed. Like, where did the president go when Melvin went in his body, and the secretary?
Presumably, this is just a headcanon. We'll find out this later. Well, actually, I can't tell you my headcanon because I know what happens later, so I'll just let you guys have your own headcanons.
My assumption is that, like, it seems more magic than science,
well, it literally is.
It's spiritual.
I think either the president was either they swapped bodies, he swapped bodies with the president, or I think maybe they have some kind of like innate like psychic link already, like they're actually the same person and they just didn't know it yet. And that's why Melvin has this like obsession with being president. He wants it so bad, and it's because he has this like psychic link already with the president because they're actually the same person, maybe. Although the president seems to make decisions that Melvin wouldn't make. Like he's more motivated by money than Melvin is. The president, it turns out, is a very bad person, and we learned that Melvin's a very good person.
This is President Clutter is the president. So it isn't a real life president, at least not named by real name.
Yes. Yeah, an interesting caveat to this magic system is that in order to become someone else, Melvin has to have a pure heart, motivated not by selfishness, but just by the want to help others.
Mm-hmm. Is that what
which makes me think it wouldn't work, because Freddy spends a lot of time being like, okay, you're sure you only want to help people and you aren't motivated by just wanting to be the president. So, which makes me think it wouldn't happen if that were the case.
Huh, I didn't think about that.
We haven't mentioned the teacher character, Mrs. Ziggernaut.
Do you want to just go through like chapter by chapter, like saying
well, maybe not chapter by chapter, because I don't have every chapter written down.
Yeah, but I can't go through the plot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts off with the field trip, which Melvin thinks is really boring, and the teacher is Miss Ziggernaut, who is called by all of her students Mrs. Ziggersnot.
Well, not to her face.
Not to her face,
but
no.
Melvin refers to her as Mrs. Ziggersnot in the narration of the book.
Yeah, but not when Mrs. Ziggernaut is around, and generally not when any adults are around.
Real quick, this was in chapter 1.
Mm-hmm.
He says he's talking about Mount Rushmore and how much he loves Mount Rushmore. He says each head is 60 feet high, or about as tall as 10 of my dads would be if each were standing on the head of the dad below. Which I thought that was just a really, really intricate way to say that his dad is 6 feet tall. And also he's seen Mount Rushmore 6 times. Lots of 6s.
Wait. How? Yeah, that's interesting.
So it's all satanic. It seemed like a lot of this book was written just for the purpose of explaining historical events.
Yeah.
And science, too.
Science.
Like, the author goes to way too great of a length to, like, describe, like, the geography behind the Mississippi River and, like, the history about how Herbert Hoover did something to stop the flood a couple years ago. And how dogs were on rooftops and stuff, which does not really play into the story at all.
Yeah, one of my notes was this book has too much learning.
It really does. Learning. There is so much learning in this book. I mean, in most Animorphs books, when we learn, we learn because the characters are experiencing it at that moment. Like, they're experiencing how good their vision is as a hawk or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They're experiencing what it's like to be an animal. In this book, the learning is just like some character decides to explain it to us, and it's just some event that has nothing to do with the book, really.
Sometimes the character is a literal teacher, that doesn't happen in other Animorphs book. The adventures happen on weekends for the most part, but in this one, they go out and sneak into that factory on a school night.
Well, this is very urgent. Like, he did see a dead cow, so that's very much very urgent.
And a dead bird. A bird touched the lagoon the cow was standing in, and it died. So
I think a lot of the weird like conundrums with the writing could just be attributed to this is a different narrator, and Applegate tries to like have the books be written slightly different for each narrator.
The problem is Melvin doesn't angst at all. It's not interesting.
Melvin also sucks at writing compared to the other Animorphs.
It's true.
He's more boring than Jake.
Oof. Yeah, you're right.
A thing about Melvin, so I don't know if this was said specifically yet, but he says about 20 people in the town are named Melvin.
Yes.
And that's, according to Wikipedia, at the time where there was around like 1,200 people in whatever town it was.
Atkinson,
Nebraska. So that's like 1 in every 60 people is named Melvin.
Yeah, so like 2% Melvin population.
I wonder why Melvin got so popular.
Maybe there's a folk hero named Melvin, and people just want to name their kids after him.
Melvin goes on a tangent about how kids should be allowed to be president because, quote, they're allowed to vote for total idiots, aren't they? So why shouldn't they be allowed to vote for kids? That was in the book.
It does not seem like a good argument. Also,
there's a lot of dumb exposition.
A big running theme I noticed in this book is how Melvin thinks people should listen to children more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
Later on, there's this part in the book where they realize that the name of the dairy plant, Nasarema, is just American backwards. And the reason why it was so sneaky and clever is because only a kid would think of that. An adult wouldn't think of that. So an adult wouldn't even realize that it's American backwards, but a kid would.
No, I consider myself an adult, and I saw that I did not realize it was American backwards. So I think there is some truth to what he says.
I attempted to read it backwards, but I quickly got a headache and had to take a nap.
If you were a child, it wouldn't happen. No.
Right.
And I remember I remember as a kid, I would sit in daycare and I would read upside down just for fun. So maybe there's something to that where kids, because they're not as attuned to reading, are able to pick up on sounds and words backwards.
This makes sense.
Yeah.
Real quick, I
think Melvin's onto something.
This book seemed less funny than most Animorphs books as well, although there was some like unintentional stuff that was funny.
Yeah.
Although one line that was the author's attempt at humor was Melvin says that he hates science. He thinks science is really boring, but he loves politics or whatever.
He loves social studies, history.
Yeah.
Math.
And he said,
I think he likes math.
No, he likes English.
Oh, he likes English?
Freddie likes math.
Freddie likes math, okay.
So Melvin says that based on the kids in his class, studying science must give you lots of zits.
Yes.
So there's a little joke poking fun at nerds who like science.
Yeah.
Unlike
Except Freddie.
Nerds.
Freddie has no
Freddie is a notable exception to that rule.
Freddie is very attractive.
Mm-hmm.
Does it say that?
No.
I think he says Freddie's
He's got
piercing eyes.
deep brown eyes.
Yes.
One thing I noticed, the tour guide said her name was Jane Smith. Isn't that like a fake name people use?
It's like
Jane
John
Doe.
Smith.
There's Jane Doe and there's John
There's Jane
Smith.
Rowe.
Oh,
Jane Rowe, Jane
Rowe,
Doe.
yeah.
I assume Jane Smith is on there too.
Oh, so you think it's a cover name?
Yeah, I mean, well, it is the whole project is a cover, so it makes
who's the
sense.
tour guide of the milking plant?
Of the milking plant, yeah.
And they get that from a field trip, right?
Yes. And a worker in the milking factory said her name is... So I think that name is a cover because the whole thing is so sneakily done.
That's interesting.
Making
Actually,
Anthrax.
that reminded me of something. I thought the tour guide would actually turn out to be a robot or something, based on the fact that they were making fun of her for speaking in a monotone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Instead, they say she is like a flight attendant, which I don't get because are flight attendants bad? Are we shitting on flight attendants now? Is that what we're doing, Capelgate?
No, it's just that flight attendants are... It's just that I think it's just that flight attendants are always smiling.
And they have to pretend to be happy even when they're not.
Well, I think
even if they're boys, point out.
Even if they're... Well, that's secretaries.
This book does get progressive at times, but we will get there when we get there.
Yes, one of the characters says, "Is this woman a robot or what?" And then I think Freddie says, "No, she's a past flight attendant." Or maybe Melvin, I don't remember.
She's a former flight attendant.
I assume it's because flight attendants have to stand at the front of the airplane and say a scripted thing clearly enough for everyone to hear them. Although I've never been on a plane, so I guess I don't know.
Melvin seems to go on a lot of unrelated tangents.
Yes.
Like, they're at this cow factory, milking factory, and there's a robot that sprays cow duty, which is what he calls a duty. And he talked about how...
I can read this excerpt if you want.
He talks about how when he remembers scooping up cow duty, cleaning cow duty, it was always scraping with a shovel on Uncle Melvin's farm. And he kind of goes into that way deeper than you'd expect for just an unrelated tangent.
And it never comes back.
No.
Which makes you think that the author of this book didn't have a lot to write and just had to pad it.
This book seems fillery.
Because
it's very fillery.
Yes, very much.
Melvin,
I believe this book was just a cap. Someone at Scholastic told Capelgate she needed to write a book involving the president because that's what was hot with the kids in the year whenever this was written.
2000.
Yeah, it was the year 2000. I mean, the year 1997. And the presidential elections, as you know, had just occurred. But
There were elections in 96.
President Clutter won, and
I guess there were, yeah.
They wanted a book covering that. Capelgate didn't want to do it, obviously, so she had to write this. She had to fill up as much as possible to make it the length of a standard Animorphs book with poop shoveling descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there was some poop humor. At first, Melvin calls it the droppings.
Yes.
And then after that, he refers to it as duty. Spelled Doody, which is... when I see the word duty, it's always spelled with IE.
IE, yeah.
I've never...
How's Howdy Doody spelled?
That's with a Y.
That's with a Y?
Mm-hmm.
But like duty head, I assume I don't know.
I don't think the phrase howdy doody is referring to poop, though.
I just never see the word duty, really. No one ever calls it duty.
Well, Melvin does.
It's a kid's book, you know.
Okay, I guess duty is poopy, but with the poop.
You know what, then it's kind of weird because, upside down or whatever, because Cabinet has used the word poop before, so I'm not sure why she decided to...
Okay, I have a theory about the writing of this book. Maybe Melvin, being a middle schooler, maybe there was a video when Melvin was in high school, and he had to write like a certain length, a fiction book for like a class or something, and this is what he wrote. That's why it's so fillery, because it had to be a certain length.
Well, no, he says it really happened. You know,
he does say it really happened, but I think he was.
That's part of the illusion.
They were told to like write something that happened in their life.
There's a part where I thought that it might have been Visser 3 coming in. It just mentioned like he saw the shadowy figure and he just vaguely described it before revealing what it was. And I thought that was going to be, the Blade ship, because all the Animorphs always talk about how Visser 3's Blade ship, which just has this dark looming appearance.
With these sharp prongs sticking out of it.
Yeah, but it ended up being a cow, so I don't know if that was like a fake out or if it was just kind of...
There's
also some kind of weird devil creature.
There's also at one point...
Visser 3 and Morph.
Maybe he saw the devil figure and then Visser 3 quickly morphed into a cow or something.
And then died?
Visser... yeah.
He crawled out of the...
Visser 3 died in this book.
Visser 3
He
died.
drank the Anthrax. It was a bit anticlimactic.
So there's also another part of this book where they have the poisonous water in a mayonnaise jar, and they say it like exudes an evil kind of sense to them. And I thought that maybe at that point it would be revealed that the water was Visser 3 and Morph.
I thought the Anthrax jar didn't smell like anything.
This was chapter 10. Chapter 10.
Yeah, it didn't. But they said it had some kind of like evil presence feeling, which is often how they describe Visser 3.
Yes.
Oh, that's true.
And that was referring to Anthrax.
But once again,
it ended up being Anthrax.
Once again, it did not turn out that the jar was Visser 3 and Morph or the water.
If we're on chapter 10, I think we should go ahead, everyone say whatever stuff they have to say before chapter 10, and then I have a quote in chapter 10 that I want to read.
I have nothing on before chapter 10.
Me neither.
Oh, there was the kind of funny part about, like, the milk machines making a slurping noise.
that was part of, like, you're talking about the long, like, tangent. That was, like, in the same paragraph of him talking about poop. He went on talking about, like, and the sucking sound makes.
Yeah, because it was slurping the cow udders to get milk.
It was described in the longest way possible. He was like, the sound that when you suck something, when you're trying to drink a milkshake and you want to get the last bits of it? Imagine that sound. When I make that sound, my mom hates it. Now imagine there's 500 kids sucking 500 milkshake. It was, like, described like that. Like,
no, I'm wondering...
My mom would hate that.
I'm wondering how often this kid drinks milkshakes for this to be an ongoing occurrence where his mom gets irritated at him for drinking milkshake at the bottom of the cup.
Seems standard to me.
Now the stakes in this book are pretty high.
Very, yes.
Wait, we're talking about before chapter 10 first, aren't we?
Well, even before chapter 10, the stakes in this book are pretty high because Melvin and Freddie are stealing the water. And Melvin worries about a policeman dragging...
We're going to talk about soft hands now.
Yeah, that's what Cole is going to be.
A policeman dragging him firmly by the ear.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty scary.
Yeah.
Which is in line with the other Animorphs books where the perils are also similarly scary.
Mm-hmm.
Alright, that's it.
Did you have anything you want to say about chapters 1 through 10?
In chapter 8, there's also a foreshadowing of Freddie has to talk about how presidents always have to cover their tracks when they're going to do something a bit not as evil or not as legal, which foreshadows the presidential corruption, which will be a bigger theme later on in the book.
Mm-hmm. Did Freddie have a dream where he was president or something?
Oh no,
Melvin. I thought he was going to have
Melvin, my bad.
Yeah, he dreamed that he was
did.
president of the U.S. and then as president he he banned all nuclear weapons. He met with
from
Russia
all of Earth.
From all of Earth forever.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I had that written in quotes. I forgot quite what it was.
I think this is foreshadowing to how later he does end up making a meaningful change in the political system, or at least it's implied that he does.
Yeah. So where in the dream he had a meeting with Russia, with the Russian government, that went so well that all nuclear weapons were banned from every country forever. What was his dream? That's all.
All right, chapter 10.
So they want to get this poison, and Melvin saw what it did to a cow and what it did to a bird or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they sneak into the facility. Mm-hmm. It's well guarded. They expect alarms to go off, but nothing happens. And they have an empty mayonnaise jar which they cleaned out, and they have rubber gloves from their mom's kitchen or whatever, and to scoop the poison in so they don't get it on their hands because it's very dangerous. Like a cow died, like they saw a bird take a sip and immediately
from this liquid in the lagoon.
In this lagoon. So let me just read this quote. Out of the tote bag, Freddy took out 2 pairs of rubber gloves. We had taken them from the cabinet under my parents' kitchen sink. My mom wore them to wash the dishes because my dad said they kept her hands soft. I didn't get why that made any difference to him, but my dad is weird that way. And when it was my dad's turn to do the dishes, he wore them also. Mom said she liked his hands soft too. Freddy and I weren't concerned about keeping our hands soft, I can tell you that. The idea never even occurred to us. We were concerned about keeping our hands safe.
Yet another tangent.
Yeah.
This one's kind of weird.
Now these books, do we ever see Melvin's parents in the book, or does he just mention them?
I don't think we
ever see them.
Yeah, I don't think they say anything.
If we did see them, I'm sure they'd be Stir's favorite characters.
Yeah.
So this is all we really know about Melvin's parents, just by offhand comments he makes about stuff they like and don't like.
They like each other to have. Melvin's parents like each other having soft hands.
Yep.
For some strange reason.
Which Melvin doesn't get. Then chapter 11, they go to Dr. Cumberton.
This is the very progressive portion of this book.
Mm-hmm.
Is Freddy the one who hooks him up with J.C. Cumberton, PhD?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a college professor that Freddy has ties to.
Can we just call her Dr. Cum the entire time?
What,
I'd be down.
I'm going to keep calling her Dr. Cumberton.
Why?
I'm probably going to call her I call her Dr. Cum in my notes because I kept forgetting if it was Cumberton or like
You can cut out
or something.
You can cut out the last 2 syllables of me saying it if you want.
It sounds like a lot of work.
No, it's not.
All right.
I like calling people by their actual names.
She's not real.
I mean...
Her real name is nothing, because she doesn't exist.
I mean, arguably.
So they go into like a college to get this poison analyzed, and they meet the secretary.
Rather sitting in a desk, behind a desk where you would expect a secretary to be,
there was a man.
A man.
Yeah.
Instead of a secretary, there's a man.
Melvin's shocked at this.
Melvin his mind is blown that a man would be standing where a secretary should be.
Right, because normally men would never want to stand where a woman would be because they get cooties, but this man just doesn't even seem to care about getting the cooties from the secretary who stands there usually.
Yeah. And the so-called he calls him the man secretary.
Is that what he calls him?
Wait, what's he calling him?
Secretary man.
No, he calls him something weird.
I think he just calls him a secretary man.
Where is it posted?
A male secretary?
I have it open.
Secretary. It'll be like near the end of a chapter.
When does Dr. Cumberton reveal that that's the secretary?
Also, Melvin spends a lot
as soon as she meets them,
talking about how instead of having to pretend he was sick when he goes to school, he had to pretend he was well, which is so weird because normally he has to pretend he's sick because he wants to stay home from school. But now that he's actually sick because he only got 4 hours of sleep, he has to pretend he's well so that he can go to school and then meet up with Freddy.
Oh yes, that was an issue that the Animorphs don't run into because this was so urgent that rather than saying, "Hey mom, I have to go out to visit Jake or whatever," Melvin he sneaked out of his house with Freddy at around midnight on a school night and consequently didn't sleep much that night. That was when he had the dream about being president and banning all nuclear weapons from the entire world forever.
Secretary man.
Secretary man.
Secretary-man, the young secretary man.
Okay.
Secretary man.
I don't even know what I was saying about the secretary man.
The secretary can. He sings in a secretary.
Are we going to talk about him meeting Dr. Cumberton, for the first time?
So...
Not you keep talking.
Okay.
He throws duty against the secretary man. Go on.
Apparently I'm not supposed to talk about
whoever wants to do it. I'm just talking about what
So do you think listeners are ready for this yet?
Yeah.
I think we sufficiently warmed them up with the secretary man.
Yes.
So it turns out that the scientist that they wanted to meet, who's very smart, by the way, and a chemist, and a scientist, and also has their own secretary.
Secretary man.
Yes, has a secretary man. Turns out this scientist is a woman, a female. Her hair is not balding. She is a woman.
She doesn't look like Albert Einstein either.
It's very neatly.
Yeah,
although it is great.
Looks nothing like Albert Einstein, despite being a scientist.
And she confirms the fact that the man is her secretary.
Well, he's a student.
A student who is taking a secretary.
Yeah, then another weird tangent. She just kind of tells us her life story about the secretary's life story and how he's trying to get by in school or something.
And Jake does say...
Melvin?
Jake? Sorry, Jake Melvin does say... Sorry, I'm confusing Jake and Melvin. Melvin does say out loud to himself something like...
I have the quote here. He says, "Oh my goodness," I muttered in spite of myself. "A woman professor with a man for a secretary. Weird." And then we assume that was to himself, but then Dr. Cum responds, "Perhaps unusual would be a better word." It may be a little unusual for a woman to make a career of science. More is the pity, but it does happen. You've heard of Marie Curie, haven't you? Which he hasn't.
Because he hates science. Science is stupid. It gives you fits.
And then chapter 12 is they discuss this whole water situation with Dr. Cumberton, and Melvin is happy that she listens to them and gives them, I'll check out this poison. She's very willing to cooperate with these people, even though they're 12-year-olds, which makes Melvin very happy.
Well, and Melvin does go on another tangent about how he hates when people dismiss him because he's a kid.
Which does happen later in the book more often.
Yes.
Another thing I noticed was the continuation of the theme that presidents have to be a jerk sometimes because
presidents?
Yeah, or just people in government. Because Melvin is practicing his leadership by taking the hand and taking all the credit for coming up with the idea to steal the anthrax, to steal the water from the plant, even though it was mostly Freddy's idea. Because, Freddy won't mind if I take credit for his ideas, because, presidents always take credit for what their cabinet members come up with. So...
I mean, that's just... In Melvin's eyes, that's just good leadership. That's
just good leadership.
Yeah.
Melvin has a much different view of leadership than Jake does.
And Melvin wants to be a leader a lot more than Jake does. He's almost like this...
Melvin seems like someone who wants to be a leader, but he's not as good of a leader as Jake.
Yeah, so I'm wondering if there'll be conflict there, where Melvin wants to be a leader, but he's not necessarily... He doesn't really... I don't think he has a lot of leader
the other Animorphs would
qualities, no.
Especially because he's a year younger than them, I think.
Well,
we don't know
he was when this book. He was when the story took place.
I guess we don't know when the story takes place relative to the Animorphs.
Yeah, because the Animorphs don't actually
Perhaps
cross over
Melvin
in this book.
Never mind. Melvin had a grandfather who fought in Vietnam, which means that this book cannot take place much earlier than the Animorphs.
Yeah.
So, then this book takes as long as possible to hold the suspense of what's in the water.
It's annoying.
They describe Freddy's entire school experience in the 2 weeks that pass. Dr. Cumberton they describe how he wants the phone to ring, but he also doesn't want the phone to ring, and I think he talks again about how he hates that adults don't take him seriously.
Real quick, before that, they tell Dr. Cumberton, "Hey, Dr. Cumberton, by the way, don't keep this on the low, because we kind of sneaked in there illegally to take the substance." And she was like, "Oh, don't worry, I'll keep it quiet. I'm honored that you would involve me in this project." Which is very strange behavior.
Unusual for an adult to do so.
We've learned that Dr. Cum is an unusual person.
You'd think that...
Yeah, she's a woman scientist.
Yeah. Perhaps being a woman scientist connects her more to children than the average male scientist. Later in the book, we meet many male characters who are, as it says, out of touch with the common people. Perhaps this book has a feminist message in it that more women should be in positions of power. I think that could certainly be read into. Anyway, then Dr. Cum calls him on the phone, and she doesn't want to tell him over the phone, so he goes there, and then she gives him a really long explanation of everything that happened before she found out what was in the water, just stretching out this book much longer, before finally revealing that it's anthrax, and that's bad.
Now, when it first said anthrax, I thought maybe it's referring to the water-containing American heavy metal band from New York City, Anthrax, formed in 1981 and considered one of the leaders of the thrash metal scene from the 1980s as a big part of the big four of the genre, along with Metallica, Megadeth, and Slayer, also considered one of the first thrash metal bands to emerge in the East Coast, who has released 11 studio albums, several other albums, and 26 singles, including a collaboration on a single with American hip-hop group Public Enemy, and who, according to Nielsen Soundscan, the band Anthrax sold 2.5 million records in the United States from 1991 to 2004, with worldwide sales of 10 million.
So Dr. Cumberton...
Wait, hang on. So, when did you...
I'm gonna go pee.
When did it become clear to you that that wasn't the case?
Well, the book didn't do a great job of explaining what anthrax is and how it's dangerous as a biological weapon.
You said it was a germ? I said that was a chemical?
Yeah, she described it as, like, imagine just like a germ.
Yeah, so it wasn't, this band Anthrax, whose lineup has changed numerous times over their career, leaving Ian as the only constant member of the band, as I thought that it might have been.
I guess a little bit of backstory about the Anthrax.
Yes, Anthrax was formed in Queens, New York City on July 18th, 1981 by guitarists Scott Ian and Dan Lilker. The band was named after the disease of the same name. See, so it was named after the disease anthrax.
Wait, so it's a disease?
Yes.
Okay, no, see, I googled anthrax. First thing comes up is a disease. You have to Google, like, anthrax chemical to get, like, what they're actually talking about.
Oh, yeah. They're two different things.
So Ian saw the name in a biology textbook, which kind of linked to this Animorphs book.
Do you think the biology textbook was actually he was reading about the band since they're like humans and that's part of biology?
Maybe. But he chose the name because it sounded, quote, sufficiently evil.
The band, you mean?
Yeah, the name Anthrax. Liller originally intended for Scott Sitari to play bass in the band during their early phases as a cover band. And Anthrax's initial lineup was completed by singer John Colony, drummer David Weiss, and bassist Paul Kahn. Kahn was briefly replaced by bassist Kenny Kushner before Littlecourt took over on bass and Greg Walls joined as a lead guitarist.
Anyway, so Dr. She tests for...
I think it's Dr. Cum.
Okay, when you left, I just talked about that.
Yeah, be natural back. Welcome back. Anyway, Dr. Cumberton. So when they get for the water, first she tests DDT. It wasn't that. Mm-hmm. Then she tests malathion. She tests arsenic. She tests every kind of poison she could think of.
Yeah.
And then...
Well, she even goes into a book to look for, like, less common poisons and just tries those just in case.
And then basically, as a joke, she tests anthrax because it's much deadlier than what she would expect to be in the water.
And I thought that maybe, as a joke, she was testing if 80s thrash metal band Anthrax was in the water. Which would have been very surprising.
Which would have been very funny.
That would have been very surprising. Although, why would she need to talk to them in secret about that, though?
I mean, if they're that day, you don't need to buy concert tickets. I don't even know if Anthrax
They've got a fortune on their hands.
Yeah. Okay, I'm done with this stupid bit.
All right.
It was really... Yeah, they're still together. Oh, they are still together.
Were they together in 1997?
1981 to present, she says. What are they doing in 1997?
So, naturally, once they found out the clear and present danger to society, everyone turns naturally to Melvin to lead them to a solution.
Yes.
Because nobody else knows what to do except for Melvin, because he has a poster of Mount Rushmore, and therefore he also knows a lot about presidents.
Yes. So Dr. Khan basically says, "Hey, Melvin, you better call the authorities," and then leaves it at that.
Yep. Then they leave.
Weird that she Yeah, whether she just told Melvin to do it and didn't like do something.
Well, she doesn't know anything about politics. She's a science person. She doesn't know. Yes. She probably doesn't vote.
Oh yeah, she says that Melvin knows what anthrax is because of its use in politics.
Yeah, she only knows it as a. She mostly is familiar with it as a disease and as a disease.
So Melvin first tells the mayor of the city, but he says. He doesn't, but the mayor, quote, doesn't understand a word them scientists say. Mm-hmm. This is the first hint in the book that perhaps political knowledge and scientific knowledge might not be mutually exclusive. Mm-hmm. It's a little subtle, but I did pick up on that.
No, I think there's also we see Melvin kind of learn to like science, which might lead him to be like the kind of ultimate leader, having both knowledge of politics and science by the end of the book.
Definitely. And then he tries to call the president, or he tries to call a few people first, but none of them take him seriously. Finally, he tries to call the president, but is told that the president doesn't take calls from members of the public. And also, his Twitter was deleted, so he can't get in that way either. Melvin then realizes that no one was going to do anything about this because elected officials don't care. Mm-hmm. And it really is a turning point for him. He sees, he learns of the harsh reality.
He knows he has to sow something.
Yes. He has to do something. It's up to him.
He has to sow something.
Sow something? Oh, he has to sow something, yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, there were quite a few typos in this book.
Yeah, at one point it says draw instead of drawer.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Freddy realizes that he doesn't even want to be president anymore, which is quite a character crisis for him because I literally don't know anything else about his character other than that. So this is pretty significant. It's good writing. It really teaches kids that you can... Sometimes your entire identity comes under a crisis.
Once it's revealed as anthrax, Melvin realizes that this could lead millions of people to die, which seems like a kind of a bigger stake than the Animorphs books.
No.
Well, it's definitely a more immediate threat than the Animorphs books.
No, I think the Yeerks are going to conquer the Earth within like a year.
Yeah, but some humans don't care. The Animorphs care a lot. Some humans would be chill with that.
I mean, some humans would be chill with millions of people dying of anthrax as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the politicians in this book are, I guess.
Yeah. So,
Oh, I like this quote from the mayor. I don't understand what they're saying. I don't think they understand what they're saying either. So
referring to scientists.
Yeah.
So
I think Melvin says something like that earlier in the book.
Yeah.
When Jane Smith is describing how the glucose and fructose and dextrose and lactose works, and he's not paying attention.
Why doesn't he want to be president anymore?
Because he
wants to take a job that helps people, like a scientist or a doctor.
He's seen now that the politicians don't really care.
Corrupt.
They don't really care.
Wouldn't that make him want to be a politician more, so he could be like a...
No, being a politician, all politicians are inherently corrupt. There's no... the only way to help people... This book is libertarian, or perhaps even anarchist, because at the beginning of the book, in order to help people, Melvin wants to become a doctor or some other career. I think this book is saying that it is not possible or efficient to help people by being a politician.
At the end of the book, Melvin says that he wants to be a doctor so he could give free medical care to people who couldn't afford it.
Which you couldn't do unless you were a politician.
Yeah, so...
Or a very rich doctor.
I guess.
So I think this book is pro-anarchy, perhaps capitalist anarchy. Melvin should amass a huge wealth, then become a doctor who provides services for free.
Yeah, I guess that isn't really like a social...
This book is the oldest anarchy server in Minecraft.
Because I guess if he was a democratic socialist, he would want to become a politician. But as a capitalist, he wants to become a doctor and then trickle down that wealth to people who need it.
Yes.
So, although he is markedly critical of certain conservative foreign policies that say we need, whenever one of our enemies develops some new technology, we need to have it as well in order to fight them. Mm-hmm. Whereas he thinks the only way to preserve peace is to just not engage anymore.
Just to get rid of weapons altogether.
Just to get rid of weapons, yep.
My next notes are about the morphing scene and the ritual that comes before.
First I have to say, this book does mention that everybody in the town could barely fill a barbershop. It then mentions later that hundreds of people arrive at the banks of the river to help stop the flood.
I think it's implied that people from surrounding towns are also coming.
Even so, the town of Atkinson, Nebraska must have a very large barbershop.
1,200 people?
So, to fit hundreds of people in it.
Well, what did it say the population was on Wikipedia?
1,200.
So perhaps, that's a really big barbershop. I'm just saying, perhaps in the future, this barbershop could be the site of another Yerk pool.
Well, Melvin's barbershop must be the place of the town, because Melvin mentions Melvin's barber. It's a different Melvin barbershop several times in the book.
Yes.
Like it's pretty much like he at one point he's thinking back to all the places he likes about home, and he mentions his house, his school, and Melvin's barbershop, and I think that's it.
Perhaps the place is Buzz. Perhaps the place is a recruitment place for the sharing, or another Yerk or front. It was mentioned a lot. It was mentioned a bit too much for it to just not be important later.
Yeah.
Also, maybe the Wikipedia population could be like including like surrounding areas a little bit when Melvin is talking about like just the
village of Atkinson, Nebraska.
Yeah, I assume it's very rural, so maybe it's not counting people. Maybe the book is counting people who live technically outside the city limits, but are or maybe the Wikipedia page is including people who live outside the city limits but are like on farmland.
Like same area code, maybe, or same...
Mm-hmm, and Melvin isn't including those people.
Anyway, morphing. Finally. 2/3 of the way through the book. Finally, there's
we're talking about the ritual beforehand, right?
Some morphing, yeah.
That is the morphing.
Chapter 20
the process
out of 32,
of morphing.
Chapter 20 out of 32 chapters, I believe,
yes.
in this book.
Oh boy. So,
what are you going to say about it, Mustard?
It comes up pretty suddenly.
It does.
It
almost comes up as if Freddy and Dr. Cum have discussed this without Melvin before they agree to do it with Melvin. Mm-hmm. I wonder how Freddy brought this up with Dr. Cum.
Well, didn't Freddy know Dr. Cum beforehand?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I think maybe they both like kind of already know about the morphing.
Could Dr. Cum also be in Omaha?
It's possible.
Does it say he morphs because he's in Omaha?
It was not mentioned.
He uses Omaha language too.
Omaha language
and calls upon the spirits and such and such.
Yeah.
It's a ritual.
I tuned out a little bit during the ritual, a little bit.
Well, I mean, so did Melvin. He felt everything.
Melvin fantasized about being the president for quite a while during the ritual. And actually, he becomes the president for real because of the Omaha magic. Which I thought was an interesting...
Omaha believe that
anyone can
you can be anything you want to be if you just put your mind to it.
And if you're honest. That's important. You gotta be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was interesting that this character who is established to be very interested in science is capable of using magic.
Now, maybe it is...
You mean Freddy?
Yes.
Freddy, yes. Maybe it is science, just he is more advanced than he seems.
Maybe this is like the Alchemist, maybe he's just so advanced that no matter what he does, even however scientific, like whatever technology he uses will just be considered magic to people who can't understand it. Do you think Freddy could be an Alchemist in disguise, and maybe he's just using the whole Omaha thing as a front to perform his magic without letting Melvin and Dr. Cum know that he is an alchemist?
It's possible.
Oh, did we mention the foreshadowing of the morphing? I don't think we did. Earlier in the book, like Freddy says, and Melvin says that Freddy says this often. Freddy always says, "You can be anything you want to be. You can do anything you want. You can be the president." Or he says something along those lines.
I believe it was Melvin said several times how when he says he wants to be president, Freddy says, "Well, you never know what could happen." Something along those lines. Where Freddy was always very supportive of Melvin's dreams.
Unlike the other kids who made fun of him. And would make fun of him even more if they knew his last name.
Mm-hmm.
Because his last name is revealed at the end of the book that Melvin's last name is Poopy Butt Gay.
Brother of the Joker.
Yeah.
Brother of the Joker.
Melvin says that Freddy has said many times that he believes that we all have the power to change ourselves into whatever we want to be. Yeah. So that was kind of foreshadowing of the morphing.
Yeah, so that comes back in chapter 20.
Yeah.
So Freddy has them sit down in a circle, holding hands, and just starts chanting in Omaha, and Melvin notices that his hands are tingling, and he experiences the peace of the forest, the beauty of the animals, the warmth of the sun, and all this other crap.
There was no more Melvin, only truth, earth, nature, and reality.
Mm-hmm.
It goes quite... There was like 3 paragraphs just about how he was feeling during the morphing. It was pretty
quite a trip.
Yeah, this is almost like, in ways, it is similar to like when the Elemist opens their minds in different parts of the Animorphs book.
Yeah.
Okay, continue.
Well, my notes aren't that as detailed, so you can keep reading.
I felt the peace of the forest, the beauty of the animals, the warmth of the sun, which makes all things grow. I felt the happiness of babies and the wisdom of the old. I felt the joy and peace of the peace and the pain of war. I felt the kindness of justice and the cruelty of all things in the world that cause hurt and are not fair. Tears ran down my cheeks. Still the rhythm and beauty of Freddy's words washed over me. Then I felt as if I were being stretched in some grotesque and horrible way.
It's also, I was going to mention, it's also foreshadowed Freddy's prayer, because in the scene where Melvin mentions that Freddy believes that people can change into anything, that's when they're about to break into the Nasarima dairy plant, and before they break in, for good luck, Freddy says an Omaha prayer. So that, and then Melvin talks about how he doesn't understand the words, but he likes the rhythm, and it makes him feel comforted inside and whatnot.
I don't remember the word Omaha in this book. I guess it wasn't on any of the pages that I read.
I think a lot of the problem with this book is that it plays into this idea of Native Americans as like mystical nature spirit people, which is really harmful and dangerous and stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah, until the morphing scene, I was gonna be like, I didn't think I would have to mention that Freddy was a Native American, because it just was like a fact about him, like whatever. Like, I didn't think I was gonna mention that until the morphing scene, at which point it became integral to the plot.
Right. Yeah, that was weird.
Anyway, until then I was like, okay, that's neat, I guess.
At first that was just going to be like, oh, see, we're different races and we can be friends.
Yeah, and Yay. I thought it was going to be just like I'm an author, I put characters of color in my books.
Yeah, that kind of thing.
This book does seem a lot more insensitive than other Animorphs books, I think. Anyway, so the morphing sequence. So this is perhaps... It's a little bit different than most Animorphs morphing, because it is quite different, although it has some similarities with the
being stretched in some grotesque way.
Yeah, often Animorphs morphing scenes always described as being very grotesque. He says, I felt as if I were being stretched in some grotesque and horrible way, like a doll made of bubble gum or a man made of clay.
I've never encountered a doll made of bubble gum, so that was... I wasn't sure what they was going for there.
Very odd description. I wrote that down just because it was weird. Like, why wouldn't you just say, like...
Bubblegum.
I would think...
Yeah, why did you say a doll, specifically? I don't think that's necessary.
Like a doll made of bubblegum.
I feel like it was made out of bubblegum.
Like, I was thinking, like, you could say, like, Stretch Armstrong, but maybe at this point, I don't know, maybe Applegate...
Applegate.
The other Animorphs writers seem much more willing to bring up real-life...
there weren't a lot of pop cultural references in this book.
If this were written by one of the other Animorphs narrators, I expect them to mention like Stretch Armstrong or some other 90s thing. Was that 90s thing or was that older? I'm looking that up.
It might be older, but it definitely was relevant.
It was available until 1997.
Wow.
And then starting in 2016 to present.
They brought Stretch Armstrong back in 2016?
Yeah, I guess so.
In Google Images, there's a picture of a Funko Pop of him. So,
oh man, that sounds like the worst thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I'll just keep reading the morphing sequence, I guess. I could see this is after a man-made clay. I could see nothing, but it seemed that first one arm was stretched to an impossible length, and then the other. I could no longer hear Freddy's voice. Surely I was flying through space. Everything was dark and empty. My legs stretched, my body warped and flattened and twisted. I spun round and over, flying and floating. I tried to scream, but I could make no sound. I opened my eyes, but everything was dark. I tried to hold tighter to Freddy's hand and Dr. Cumberton's, but their hands were gone from mine. I was alone. My body twisted and flipped and rolled through emptiness. I felt scared and dizzy, stretched and distorted. Suddenly my feet touched something solid. Everything was still black. My head was spinning. My hands pressed on something solid in front of me, propping me up. I guess I'll skip ahead a little bit just before he talks about his feet, because that's also part of him getting used to morphing. I looked down at my feet and got dizzy all over again. Not only were my feet in shoes that were polished and shiny to a shiny black gloss, but they had to be 6 feet away from my head. I had never seen them so far away. I felt like I was standing on stilts. So he morphed into a grown-up, and it's the president, we find out. Anyway, that's the only morphing description in this book. He morphs back, I think, although I don't think that's...
They don't describe the process of him morphing back.
Then he's the president.
Well, he doesn't notice he's the president at first. It takes a little bit for him to pick up on the fact that he is the president.
To come in and have this round office, even oval shaped, you could say.
There's like an eagle symbol on my desk.
Huh.
And then someone says, "Mr. President," or something like that.
And it clicks with him.
Mr. Prisoner, are you okay?
Oh, actually, I think it clicks when he comes up with the word oval in his head. I think that's when it finally clicks.
So we learn here. So he calls a cabinet meeting. We learn that Freddy has transformed into the Secretary of the Interior or something like that.
That's a pretty fitting position.
Yeah. And he says, "Why don't we have and time is of the essence here, but he needs to stop this." He needs to stop this anthrax from polluting the entire watershed. So naturally, he has everybody in the cabinet state their position and their goal for their tenure. He notices that everyone is talking about money and how they want more money for their department. No one said, "My top priority is to do what's best for the people of this country." And I thought
pretty vague.
That was very profound. That was very deep. It really made me think. It was very sad.
I'm 12 and this is deep.
Yeah.
I noticed 2 different times he describes the size of a table or a desk in terms of how many people you could set dinner for
6
there.
6 people at the Oval Office and I think 58 at the
cabinet.
When he first sees his desk, he says you could have set dinner for 6 on top of that thing. In the Oval Office, he says you could set dinner for 58 people at this table, or whatever.
Yeah, I didn't even note for that. I just remembered it off the top of my head.
Dinner for 6 isn't even a very large table.
It's big for a personal desk.
I guess so.
For a desk.
That's his president's desk.
Dinner for 6, isn't that just like 2 takeout boxes?
No, it's 6 plates. Set
dinner. Okay, yeah.
About as big as his parents' dining room table.
You can fit dinner for 6 people on
like all you need is
enough food for 6 people on one table.
All you need is 2 Kentucky.
You fit like 6 Big Macs.
All you need is 2 Kentucky Fried Chicken Family Fill-Ups, and you're done. That can fit on like a desk at school.
No, 6 plates, 6 forks.
This episode is sponsored by Kentucky Fried Chicken Kitchen Family Fill-Ups.
For legal reasons, no, it's not.
Legal reasons.
I don't know. I don't think you have to say that, actually.
Master, can we get sponsors for this podcast?
I mean, I should.
This podcast costs so much money to make, you guys don't believe it.
I should add sponsors from Anchor. I could add ads at any point, but then I have to like hook up my credit card to the account.
Yeah, but we should just have sponsors in the episode. Just commercials in the middle of the podcast are funny. Yeah.
Well, we talk about how much you like Anchor.
Well, we already have a sponsorship from John Kirby.
Anchor,
too,
man, so. Anchor. When I need my boats to stop moving, you know what I use? I use an Anchor.
Anchor? I hardly know her.
Do you guys know that?
Is that the only reason you said that? Or is Anchor a middle thing?
No, Anchor's speaking when I put my podcast on.
I bet these two do not know what an onk is.
Yeah, but they don't actually.
Onk, isn't that the cross with the loop on the top?
What? Okay.
What? I don't know what an onk is. What are we talking about?
I only know because my sister has a tattaoo of it.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, his sister. Unfortunately, Stir's sister does not have a tattoo of that.
I don't know. Anyway, back to Animorphs.
Air Morph One.
Air Morph One. What do we even have to use the bathroom?
Speaking of having to use the bathroom, Melvin has to use the bathroom as president.
That is his most important concern when he is president.
Unfortunately, we are not treated to a scene of Melvin in the bathroom as the president. But then again, none of the other Animorphs books ever addressed this either.
Jake P is when he's a wolf.
That's true.
Jake P is when he's a human.
It doesn't talk about when he...
It doesn't count. He's a human.
Talk about his wolf penis, though.
Yeah, they don't talk about that. So, furthermore, he wonders if he would have a wife. And then he says, yeesh, I don't like girls that much.
I forgot about this. He says yeesh, isn't it yikes?
I don't remember.
I think it's yikes.
Having one around full time? I don't think so.
That is what he says. Apparently his mom isn't around full time.
Which makes sense, because we do not see her in this book.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Your own mom is not a girl. Everyone knows that. Moms are girls.
I have no other notes on this book.
I have very few notes from here, but I do have a couple notes.
But the book does really pick up at this point. Like, once the morphing starts, the book, I think, gets significantly more interesting.
I mean, a few of them are okay, referring to girls.
So it's revealed that the Nasarima milk plant, that's the name of it, was called the Nasarima milk. First of all, it was built by the United States government to be an anthrax plant.
It was the president's idea.
Yes. And it was also called the Nasarima milk plant, which is a very secret code. Turns out it is American backwards.
Mm-hmm.
The president knew that this code was very difficult to crack for any adults because only kids would think to read things backwards.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where we get that.
I believe Melvin said,
Melvin.
How did this factory get the name? It sounds like the name of some tribe of Native Americans, but it's not a tribe I've ever heard of. Anyway, continue.
All right.
I guess I have nothing to say about that. No one else does.
No, I have nothing to say about this whole book.
So Melvin learns that the solution, as president, he learns that the solution to the flooding and the river of the Anthrax, he must build a wall to separate the two. And so he gets the army and the great people of Atkinson, Nebraska together. They all build a wall, and it keeps the things separate. We really learn a lot. And this whole scene, I cried. I felt very patriotic because it was really just a story of Americans coming together in a time of need. And the president, the president being Melvin, puts the people before his country.
Yes, there's a line I really liked that says, this is from Melvin. Now, instead of poisoning people, the government of the United States was helping them, which is kind of Melvin's whole take on the being president thing, of being a helpful president rather than a poisonous, greedy president, as President Clutter before him was.
If only we listened to 12-year-olds more often, then our country would be in a much better place.
Yeah, 12-year-olds aren't greedy, like adults, presidents and politicians.
Dr. Comma's Pres Advis is my next note.
I'm out of notes.
I don't know what you were.
All I have left is just to say that Melvin sure learns a lot from his experience, and so much that he decided he doesn't want to be president anymore. He wants to be a doctor.
And he decides he wants to pay attention to science.
He takes down his poster of Mount Rushmore because...
Wait, I'm not going to talk about what Burden does. He says... Before, so Melvin kicks him out. Melvin quits the Nasarima plant, tells him to shut down, and then Burden's like, "You'll never get away with this, never."
That doesn't actually end up doing anything.
What? No,
because Burden sends all of the freaking Secret Service to kill Melvin.
Supposedly, that's what Melvin thinks.
And then they all
but it's never addressed.
He gets into his limousine. His helicopter doesn't take off. He gets into his limousine, and all of the motorcycle people abandon him and his driver, and then start shooting at him. And then there's a funny callback to the invasion where Marco is driving the golf cart around, and it's funny hijinks.
Yeah. Because Melvin, of course, doesn't know how to drive.
Melvin doesn't know how to drive.
And he tries to drive the presidential limousine.
So very many wacky hijinks ensue, but then once he gets on the Air Morph One, Air Force One, everything is fine, and never mentions this again.
Can we talk about Dr. Cumberton being there?
Yeah, she's there.
So, he didn't know that she was there because First of all, she looks the exact same when she morphed over. Presumably she morphed over to the White House or whatever.
Yeah, unlike the others, Melvin.
Yeah, I thought they would say that she was her twin sister or somebody worked at the White House, but they never explained that.
I thought you'd never call for me, Dr. Cumberton said. She is the scientific advisor of the president, apparently. How am I supposed to know you were here, I said. I was in your bedroom with you holding hands, wasn't I? She replied. What? Mattingly asked.
And Mattingly is...
The chief of staff.
The chief of staff.
Never mind, I said. It's kind of complicated. Besides, we have no time to lose. I was in your bedroom with you holding hands? Is it so...
So maybe this is... maybe
reference to the scandals in the Clinton administration. Wait. That came after 1997.
Because Bill
this
Clinton
book's 2000, I think.
Did hold hands with many women.
In bed.
A specific woman. I don't know. I actually
the
wasn't
advisor
alive
of science. Yeah, this is 2000, this book. Interesting thing. Maybe that's why his parents want to smooth hands so much, because hand holding is like really significant to Melvin's.
To Melvin.
His dad's probably named Melvin.
He's Melvin Jr.
And that's all about like, oh, you gotta pay attention in school because Cumberton comes up with this plan to clean up the Nosarama plant, and Melvin can't follow it, and he's like, oh, see, at first I thought the president doesn't have to learn science, but now I've learned that the president needs to understand science in order to make good decisions.
Anything else about the book? I'm done talking about the book.
Oh, I also thought that they were gonna use the cow slurping tubes to soak up all of the anthrax lagoon, but they never did that.
Because it spent so much time focusing on like the slurping of the
I thought it would come
machine.
back,
I thought maybe they'd use that to slurp up all the flooded water and put it in the milk tanks.
I think Melvin just likes writing bullcrap.
I think it is too. Yeah, they call the cleanup project Operation Pops Zartna, which is anthrax stop backwards. Just silly. And of course, Freddy doesn't get it because he is a big ol' science brain, and he's not childish enough to understand.
Doesn't he say something like, "Oh, what's that? Is that some new scientific process?" And he's like, "No."
Yeah.
But it's never explained. You have to be sharp enough to.
No, isn't it? Doesn't he say it's stop anthrax?
No, I don't think so. I think you just have to pick up on that, which I did pick up on that one.
We took turns reading chapters, by the way, out loud. I don't think we said that.
So now it's time to talk about the cover?
Are we gonna talk about...
they're going to talk about how they wanted to freaking hang Burden. They're like, nope, we got to put him on trial first, because that's how the law works.
Haven't you read the Constitution?
I haven't read the Constitution.
You've got to read... You've read too many science books, Mr. Freddy. You've got to read more Constitution. That's a quote. It's not.
It's not a quote.
It
just made that up.
Does someone want to talk about what was going to be like commentary about people all being white in the White House, but then it didn't go anywhere?
Yeah, they mentioned that everybody in the White House was a white man, but then they just don't elaborate on that or do anything with that. So I guess that's subtext. I don't know.
They're also like, oh, the army is bad because they just want to make war and stuff, but later on the army helps them dig out a big levee. The flood.
Melvin specifically says
the army is not all
Melvin
bad.
specifically says he had a grandfather who fought in Vietnam. He certainly respects the men and women in our army. And it's just General Asshole who's bad. He's very bad.
Yeah.
His name's General
Burden.
Bad
eggs.
Yeah, it's few bad eggs.
His name's General Burden. Asshole is his father's name.
Yeah. Okay.
It says, I think, said Mattingly, snapping shut his cell phone, it stands for Operation Stop Anthrax. You know, Mattingly, I said, you catch on pretty fast for a grown-up. What a weird thing for the president to say. You catch on pretty fast for a grown-up.
Everybody in the cabinet's like, who is this weirdo? Why is he being weird?
Hang on, so when he moves back, does the president just is like, who figured stop this? Turn back on the anthrax machine.
I know, right? Like, he fixes up the whole president's life. He gives this whole nice speech about how we gotta... Oh, thanks for letting me be a servant of the people. We can't save lives by creating things that kill. The only thing I cared about was that people were safe. And everybody's like, yay, now Clutter, President Clutter used to be a jerk, but now he's a good guy. Yay, he cleaned up his act.
He'll clearly get elected to a second term.
He'll clearly get elected to a second term. So now that Clutter gets back in his old body, is he just going to be like, well, I guess I gotta be good now?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was like newspapers like, oh, president's good now, everyone. President has change of heart. extraordinary day in Atkinson are 2 headlines.
And then after they're all done cleaning up and stuff, they go out into a field. No security around. Nobody watched them, and they do the Omaha ritual again,
which returns them to their old
bodies.
Anyway, that's the book. That's Air Morph One.
But should we read the morphing back? Doesn't it?
I don't think it describes.
You guys keep talking. I'm gonna.
It does. It says like, it was like before, but I expected it, so it was fine.
Air Morph One overall probably the worst book in the Animorph series so far.
I'll quick with that. Morphing back kidnapping anywhere near scary as the first time. For one thing, I had known what was going to happen. For another thing, I'd really wanted to go back to my own room and my own bed and the kid's life I used to have. The tumbling. Hang on. As I had walked away from the crowd, Freddy and Dr. Compton walked with me. We stood in a circle there in the field and held hands while Freddy said the ancient and mystical words. The tumbling, stretching, shrinking, and warping through the darkness made me feel happy this time, not frightened. Back in my room, Freddy had hugged me, so probably as well. So then they all appear in his room, I guess. Anyway, so that's it. And the book ends. The last line. Oh, we should read the last paragraph quick. I looked around my room, happy to be there, but I took the poster of Mount Rushmore down off my wall. I didn't care a bit about having my face carved on the mountain anymore. Oh yeah, did we bring that up that he wanted to be on Mount Rushmore?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I don't know if he brought it up, but it's true.
Yeah, he wanted to be one of the. He was like, one day I'm going to be president. I'm going to be in Mount Rushmore, which is really tall, 6 to my dad's, 10 or whatever. When I grew up, I thought I'd do something to really help people. Maybe I'd be a doctor to help the sick and prevent disease. I could bring babies into the world and give free medical care to people who could afford it. That wouldn't be helping people. Oh, sorry. That would be helping people. But if I'm going to do that, I thought with a sigh, I am really going to have to start paying a lot more attention in science.
So let's talk about the cover and the back cover now.
Yeah, so first we'll talk about the cover.
It doesn't...
It's inaccurate.
It is. It's clearly Capelgate clearly, or David Mattingly, whoever clearly felt.
I should ask him on Twitter about this. He follows me now.
Clearly,
about this book.
Clearly felt.
Yeah. That's what he was thinking.
Clearly felt. He clearly felt obligated to replicate the standard Animorphs cover, even though it didn't work in this book because there was no morphing of that sort. We see Melvin gradually transitioning, in the Animorphs, traditional Animorphs fashion into the president. That just doesn't happen in this book. He closes his eyes, he hallucinates, he wakes up as the president. It's not accurate. The cover's kind of shit.
He ages up into a grown man, while also his clothes go from less formal to more formal. He goes from a t-shirt to a nice dress-up shirt and a tie to a full suit. Which is kind of funny.
Yeah, definitely.
So he morphs clothing, but just on this cover, because obviously the morphing works different in this book.
Yeah, there's 3 phases. The second one, he doesn't have a suit coat on, and the 3 different phases look like totally different people, and totally different clothes too. Well, not totally different people, but...
No, I can see them being the same person.
Yeah, just Google Air Morph One, and this book cover will come up if you want to see what we're talking about. Because it's a lot different than...
It's really important that you know that that's a milk plant. It says milk
17 different times. And there's also an armed gunman standing in front of it, which I don't remember from the book.
Yeah, that wasn't.
And they're loading in these milk tanks into this army vehicle. Looks like. Oh, yeah. And there's also another dress-up shoe on top of the building.
What?
Look at it. It's a shoe. It's a pant with a pant leg.
Is that what that is?
I think so.
I'm not sure. It could be. I think there's just like a chimney or something like Duck Chimney.
No, be not sure. Look at this. Don't you think that's a shoe?
Yeah, it definitely is.
I'm not convinced. What was I going to say? Yeah, this is the first Animorphs book where the cover has more than one actual person on it.
Quite a background.
And yeah, quite a background. Usually the backgrounds are just sky or water and sky, all the same color. This is like a painting and not a digital Photoshop.
It's got a shiny raised cover with a raised little picture of a boy morphing into a girl, or maybe a girl into a boy. It's
just a kid morphing into a kid with longer hair. It's just a time lapse of a kid growing out his hair.
The Animorphs logo.
Pretty much it is, yeah.
The Animorphs logo is quite a bit different on this book. I like the S. Everything it looks pretty much normal except the S is like an S, but the bottom half of it is cut off. It looks like a backwards question mark without the dot. I think it's interesting.
All right.
We're going to read the back cover.
I don't think we need to, because I think we described it well enough in our description.
No, but it's a funny back cover. I want to talk about how funny it is.
I don't know. I think we covered all the funny parts.
Well, the back cover is badly written.
It is. See it for yourself.
Go find this book.
I'm
Actually,
tired.
don't buy this book.
Don't give this person money.
Buy the other Animorphs books. Buy the graphic novel. The graphic novel's good.
Yeah, use your money on that.
You get more than
If you
made.
find this book on the street somewhere, you can take it. That's the only acceptable way to come into contact with this book.
We did find this book on the street.
Yeah, we did. All right, I'm tired.
Wait, we didn't end the podcast yet.
And we're not gonna tell. If you're wondering why we're not telling a joke now, it's because this episode was a joke. Haha! You got pranked.
This isn't Animorphs. This is Humanimorphs by M.D. Spencer.
Which is completely different.
Completely different series. Animorphs Book 4. Don't check it out because it's bad. This writing was terrible. It was all filler.
It was boring.
Didn't even morph for most of it.
Yeah, this seems like more of the kind of children's books I was reading as a child, like in terms of quality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This is definitely the kind of like one-off book that I would read like if I'm bored and I saw it.
This is what Animorphs.
This is book
I
4
Animorphs to
of
be, but in a bad
Humanimorphs.
way.
We just found it randomly on the street. It's book 4. There's only 6 of these. I think each one is a separate story because there's like teasers for
different
other ones.
characters.
Like that's how the one's about like Benjamin and how his mom isn't attractive anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, different conflicts for each episode. I mean, book.
There's more to it than that, but
Different mechanics for turning into.
Right, like in one of them, in this one, he finds a magic seashell, which turns him into Poseidon, who I don't think counts as a human.
This is honestly much more than anything we've said in the Animorphs series, much more of what I expected Animorphs to be like.
Mm-hmm.
When I saw the Animorphs covers in libraries, I thought each one is about a child who has a different way of morphing, and it's just they morph into one thing. Which
no, I assume they had the same way of morphing. Like this is an alternate universe where some kids are born with the power to morph.
Well, yeah, I assume they were born with it, or maybe they found it somehow. I assume it's basically like this, but with Animorphs instead of humans, which is This seems like it's trying to be. This seems like an Animorphs parody made to appeal to Animorphs people by someone who has never read an Animorphs book.
Oh, certainly not.
Because this is what I would assume Animorphs is like. This is what I assumed. This is exactly what I assumed it was like looking at the covers as a kid.
Yeah. But if you were a kid, you were looking at this or an Animorphs book, you wouldn't know which. You'd be like, oh, whatever. These were probably the same kind of thing.
Animorphs is really good.
How could you possibly have been talking about Air Morph One this entire time?
We broke the fourth wall now. The gig's up. This is Humanimorphs.
They found us.
This is Humanimorphs, written by who's it written by?
M.D. Spencer.
This is Humanimorphs, written by M.D. Spencer.
No, we're gonna sign off now. I think we're done.
By K.A. Applegate.
I think we're done.
Okay.
Sign off time.
Do you have a joke? Oh yeah, sign off.
No, there's no
the joke was this
episode.
The joke was this book. Oh, we already said that. You were just a loser and not here. My name is Be Natural.
I'm better.
But not really.
I'm Muster.
I'm Stir.
Bye.
Bye.
Before we get into the book, we actually received a voice message.
We did.
A message. Oh, a message.
Oh
we
my
received
God.
the message, Bryn.
Jesus.
Bryn,
Just
we received the message.
Yes, we did. Just get on with it.
From the Andalites. Just kidding. It wasn't from the Andalites. It was from another Animorphs podcast called An Animorphs Book Club podcast.
An
Not to be
important
confused
distinction.
with the Animorphs Book Club podcast. We want to thank An Animorphs Book Club podcast for sending us the well wishes. Good wishes?
Well wishes.
Well wishes. I
well
feel like
wishes
that's
is grammatically correct. Yeah. That's
well
the
wishes.
phrase.
We want you to fall into a well, but I assume they don't want that.
I'm assuming.
But we wish them well as well.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for your shout out. If you haven't listened to an Animorphs Book Club podcast, you definitely should. They are hilarious.
They are very funny people.
Very funny, maybe more funny than us. I don't know. I'm a bad judge of funniness.
They have a better bit barrel than we.
Yes. They live at the top of the bit barrel.
They're the bourgeoisie bit barrel.
Okay.
Bitches. Sorry. You guys aren't bitches. I'm just trying to find a rhyme. Or a... Anyway,
thank you guys so much for your voice message, and we wish you well.
Yeah, well wishes.
Yeah.
All right, on to the. Get enough of this sentimental bull hockey. Time to get to the book.
Today we read Animorphs 4.
No, today we read book 10 of the Animorphs. Okay, we have to go.
How do you know which?
Well, we'll just go through all of them now.
Oh, that's right.
Today we read just yet another boring book of the Animorphs. Nothing special here, guys.
Today we read book 11 of the Animorphs. Today we read book 12 of the Animorphs. Today we read book 13 of the Animorphs.
Today we read book 14 of the Animorphs.
Make your bet on how many books I'm actually going to get done between now and April 1st. I bet it's going to be like 1 or 0 or 2.
Yeah, today.
Today we read.
You said 11 and 12.
Today we read the 15th book in the Animorphs series.
Wait, did you say 10?
Just skip over 14.
Yeah, I said 10, I think. We said 10?
Today we read the 10th book in the Animorphs
You already
series.
said 10.
Today we read book 15 in the Animorphs series.
Today we read book 16 of the Animorphs.
Well, now you cut me
Today
off.
we read book 55 of the Animorphs series.
I'm going to stick this at the end of the episode, probably. Let's just start doing this.
Today we read book 16 of the Animorphs series.
This is being recorded. When is this being recorded? This is like January 10th, 2021.
Today we read the 17th book in the Animorphs series.
Today we read the 18th book of the Animorphs series. Look, this is how this podcast works. Okay, if I don't cut you off, then in the time between you stopping talking and me about to say something, then somebody else is going to start talking.
Yeah, but this is stuff that we have to edit in, so it's going to be...
So everyone just
It'd be
pause
funny.
for like 5 seconds after.
What was I going to say?
You were going to say
I'm
that...
get a freaking word in with you people.
You were going to say today we read in the 20th book of the Animorphs series.
We only have to go to 64. Today we read the 21st book of the Animorphs.
I'm thinking.
Today we read the 22nd book in the Animorphs.
Today we read the 23rd book of the Animorphs series.
What was I going to say?
Today we read Animorphs series book 25. 24? 24.
It's did 24, didn't I?
25.
Today we read book 26 of Animorphs.
We can probably stop there because this is going to be released in 4 months. And
Today we read Animorphs book 27.
I think I'm going to get 17 books done in that time.
Okay.
Yeah, probably not.
I'm probably based
I'm
on
not gonna
how
get one done. No,
Okay,
you.
so for timeline, I'm going to stick this at the end of the episode. So for timeline reasons, the last episode we recorded was the graphic novel episode.
Mm-hmm.
Megamorphs.
No, we did Megamorphs 2, and then before that we did the graphic novel episode, and then before that we did book 18 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So
the last one we released was currently 9.
Yeah, right now we did 9. So the release schedule is going to be, we had 9, I'm going to release the graphic novel episode, and then I'm going to release hopefully 10, 11, and 12, maybe. And this is going to be released on April 1st, because it's funny. April Fools! This isn't actually Animorphs, this is Humanimorphs.
Don't put that at the beginning.
This is going to be at the end. You
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
April Fool at the beginning.
Yeah.
That'd be like,
Anyway,
Anyway, we can start the episode now. I'm going to stick one of those in there. Depending on how many I get done, I'm going to stick that in. So,
Animorphs Book Club.
this is technically the very end of the episode. Do you have any final thoughts?
why don't you just record it by yourself after when you get to it?
Well, because then I have to import 2 audio files.
welcome to the Animorphs
No,
Book Club.
when you're about to release it, just record it and put it in.
Well, because then I have to record something.
You haven't had no problem doing that before.
Yeah, but it's annoying. I have to import 2 audio files then.
So you're gonna make us sit here for 20 minutes.
No, we're
to
done. I told you we're done. We're going to start now.
Be natural. Hello, who are you?
Last episode was uploaded on frickin' September 19th. Holy crap, we're behind.